Why is the average guitarist a worse musician than the average pianist or any other instrumentalist? Come to that, and how can we fix this? Hello, I'm Jay. I'm going to attempt to answer this question and provide a solution. So if you're a guitarist and you feel inferior to other musicians, or you feel you've got gaps in your musical abilities, then please keep watching. So firstly, I guess I should qualify my initial assumption of, on average, guitarists being worse musicians than pianists. Well, I first noticed this at music college. I studied classical guitar. There was no electric. And pretty much every other instrumentalist, piano, violin, brass, woodwind, seemed to be more skilled musicians in every area of musicianship. Later on, as a working musician, I've played in house bands, backing shows, orchestral work, and I've met all sorts of musicians and many other guitarists, and the same always seemed to be true. I've never come across a band leader that was a guitarist. Always keyboards, always piano. So why is this? Well, let's go over a few reasons I've considered, and I've heard others say as to why this might be. The guitar is harder to play. The piano has less physical barriers getting in the way of playing music. So I've heard guitarists say this. Why is it harder to play than the piano? Well, you need two hands to create a note. Compared with the piano, you just need one hand to press a note. Very easy. You press a key down, you get the perfect tone. Yeah, this is true. But we're not the only instrumentalists that need two hands to make a note. Take the violin. Notoriously hard to make a sound on a violin. Brass instruments, takes weeks of practice to even make a sound that doesn't sound like a pop. So the guitar is illogical is another reason why it's considered harder to play. Compared with the piano, yes. It doesn't get more logical than the piano, does it, in terms of layout of the notes? But other string instruments have the same thing to deal with. Yes, we have a couple more strings than a lot of string instruments, but we also have frets. Frets make our life a lot easier. Having notes in more than one place makes the guitar harder to learn. Again, yes, but so do other string instrumentalists. We may have a few more duplicate notes than most string instruments, but this is as much an advantage as a disadvantage. So harder to play? I don't think so. Excuse me a second. Just needed to play with myself down there. That's better. Another thing I've considered is the nature of the instrument. Traditionally, the guitar just strummed chords. It's been used as an accompaniment instrument. That's all the guitar does. Again, true, but well, in many genres that is still the case. But in most genres, it's greatly developed in what it can do and what it's thought to be able to do. So some of these reasons are just common misconceptions. While others may be contributing factors, I don't think they get to the heart of the matter. So what is at the heart of the matter? What is the one fundamental reason which all of these problems stem from? If we can identify that, surely we can address it and solve the problem. Is there one fundamental reason? Well, I think there is. So here it is. Here's my conclusion. Guitarists learn guitar. They do not learn music. So what do I mean by learning guitar? Well, what I mean is this. It seems people go straight in with learning and only learn the things that the guitar does so much of the time because it's really good at them. Playing power chords, strumming open position chords, bendy, bluesy, pentatonic, licky things, rolling arpeggios, classic licks from famous songs that people love. With acoustic guitar, it really is mainly open position chords, strumming and picking patterns. That's how you learn the acoustic guitar. With electric guitar, depending on the style you're interested in, well, again, open position chords, rock guitarists with power chords and bluesy shuffles, or metal-y guitarists with heavy metal-y bass string riffs. So with a lot of self-taught guitarists, they learn songs just by rote, like a robot, or their favourite guitar parts from their favourite songs. This approach often leads to people struggling for a few years and then giving up entirely. Or the thing that we see, which I guess we're talking about here, is thousands of guitarists who can play a few chords, a few scales. They can play them really fast as well sometimes, some impressive sounding licks, but they have these huge gaps in the most fundamental areas of their musicianship. The idea that we end up with guitarists that can play an E7 sharp 9 chord or a 2-octave G minor pentatonic scale, but don't know where all the notes of C are on their instrument, or they can't play Happy Birthday. It's mental, but it's all too common. Other instrumentalists generally approach learning their instruments in a more musically logical manner. The closest to a more logical musical approach is the classical guitar route. You do start with single notes and simple melodies. Big chords are brought in later on. However, there are still many holes in the traditional classical guitar route. It makes me think of a time at music college. We were given an exercise of reading a chord chart, something that an electric guitarist can do with their eyes shut, because they've got transparent eyelids. Being an all-round guitarist myself, it wasn't a problem, but every other guitarist could not do it. And these were not complex chords. We're talking D, B minor, F sharp minor, A7 was probably as complex as it got. But as they were all classical guitarists, they could not do it. That's not how you learn the classical guitar. So that's what I mean by learning the guitar, not music. So the solution, of course, is to learn music on the guitar, not the guitar, the things that the guitar does so well. So what would a better, more musical approach look like? Well, I think it's pretty simple. You just think about learning music, then work out how to do it on the guitar. First lesson should be to learn the note of C everywhere it occurs on the guitar, every octave, just the note of C. Learn how you write it down on the musical stave. Seems like an obvious place to start, doesn't it? Lesson 101. And yet you can already do something that so many guitarists that have been playing for years, some even decades, can't do. And I'm talking from experience. I've had adults come to me in their 50s and 60s, come to me for lessons, that have been playing their whole lives that can't do this. I ask them to play me a note of C. They don't know. I point to a note of C, ask them what note it is. They don't know. Of course, these are not full-time professional players, but still. You could stay with just this note of C and learn the basics of rhythm on repeated Cs. My wife learned the piano when she was a child, and her piano teacher made her play just the note of C for 6 months. She wasn't quite right in the head, her piano teacher, but still. Next, you can play C to C sharp or C to D and C to D. Learning about tones and semitones, learning how they sound, hearing the difference, 1 fret, 2 frets. Then the first 5 notes of a C major scale with the interval names. Work out simple melodies using these notes. Then a C major arpeggio. Then a full C major scale. Then a C major triad. And so on. Doing these things off every note of C that you've learnt all over the neck. Stay with these things for ages, working out melodies, making up melodies, getting to know the sounds, really learning them. I would even stick with the key of C, A minor, until you've reached the point where you can play all the notes, the scale, the arpeggios, all the chords in the key, all over the neck, complete knowledge of C major over the entire fretboard. It's just learning the white keys of the piano. But you're thoroughly learning the sounds, the building blocks of music on your instrument. Of course, I know there's more to this than making a great musician, but this is about laying a solid foundation, paying your dues. It's the solid foundation that is missing from so many guitarists. But you would, or you should, be making music with every step, each of these steps. So they wouldn't just be exercises. So what I've stated here, what I've outlined here, seems to be an obvious approach to learning the guitar. So why is it not developed in this way? Well, I can see, and I know from my own teaching, that there are barriers to this approach. This is kind of an ideal approach in a perfect world, I guess. There's physical barriers. You would need to use all 4 fingers of the left hand for fretting notes quite early on. I'm thinking of the 4th finger really, although a lot of people struggle with different fingers. This is an issue, but if you stayed with the first note of C and tried playing it with different fingers, strengthening them all up, then this can be overcome. You just got to be prepared for a few weeks of boring practice. Current methods and syllabuses that are around at the moment, the ways people learn at the moment, are actually barriers to this approach. So if you're working through a method book, or if you're doing grades, which are pretty good these days, you can do acoustic, electric, rock, as well as classical. They're not geared for this approach. Whilst most do progress in a logical manner, there's always too much too soon, and they miss out essential things. So there's not much material out there that is actually conducive to this more musical, logical approach. Books, methods, online tabs, songs, YouTube videos, all make the same mistakes, apart from this one, obviously. Such as, well, again, the chord thing. Straight in with changing between big chords, learning 2-octave scales too soon when you haven't learnt 1-octave scales properly, introducing picking patterns in the right hand before you've learnt to use individual fingers properly. On and on and on it goes. But if you're following any of these routes, you're kind of forced into doing too much too soon and skipping over basic things. So I hope that at least has given you something to think about. Whether you're a beginner, a more advanced player wanting to improve, a teacher, whatever. I do intend to make a follow-up video to this, going through the steps I outlined earlier in more detail and adding a few more, and trying to structure a nice simple approach covering the basics. As a kind of test. Go through these steps, see if you can do them. If you can, good. If you can't, then learn them and fill in those gaps. This is my first video on this channel, but there will be many more to come. Not just teaching guitar-y videos, but also music videos. Some of me pole dancing. There'll be a couple with trampolining chickens, and one where I regurgitate a banana in its complete whole original form. I'm Jay. Thank you for watching. Please like me and subscribe. It's free and it makes me feel loved.